Greetings, everyone. This is Payman Lorenzo, your host of the Leaders Out podcast. Today, I have a three-peat, another wonderful episode with one of my good friends and one of the most powerful and inspiring stories I've had over the past year and a half, over the past 200 episodes, phenomenal guest. But this one is one of the most powerful and most enlightening and inspiring. My good friend, Catherine Cooper. And we had already two episodes before the first one where she shared about her story, her background, and all that, how she left her hometown, a small town, her family to the big city. And now in the second part, we continued a journey from the moment she arrived in the big city to building a life for herself. And now we're gonna continue the conversation here today to where we left off. It's gonna be the beautiful free flowing conversation because we had a wonderful conversation just before going live, and she was sharing wonderful wisdom. And I said, you know what? That deserves to be recorded because that is really powerful. So without any further ado, Catherine, my awesome friend, welcome back to the show.
Oh, it's so good to be with you, Payman. I so appreciate you, and I so appreciate the love that you send out. It's just wonderful to be here, and thank you for having me back. I'm humbled. I'm grateful,
Pleasure's
and
all mine.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful to share the story that I have, only because I think it's a little unusual,
Mm-hmm.
and I could be wrong, but it's everyone's opinion. Um, my goal is not just to share my life and some of the strange things that have happened to me, but also, Payman, I so want to have people lose fear and doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to overcome all of that, not knowing that those were the things that were holding me back. I
Mm-hmm.
had no knowledge of how to enter the world. I was never taught. I was taught to obey. I was taught to honor your parents and that you support your parents financially, physically, however, um, in the best way that you could for the rest of your life.
Yes.
That's what I was taught, and that doesn't teach you much about life. It just teaches you to be on like a track, and you just keep walking and walking and walking and walking, and you never get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my goal, Payman, is to have people be happy. I'm tired of hearing people say to me when I say, "Hey, how are you today?" And they look at me, and I'm sorry for the language, but they look at me and they say, "Same day, same shit, different day."
I
I think that's just
yeah. I
absolutely awful approach to life. And
yes.
I'm not criticizing them. I'm not condemning them. I'm not judging them. I'm just saying that in order for life to change, people have to change and they have to want to change.
Totally.
None of my story here is going to make any difference to anyone unless they want to change. And that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that maybe somewhere in here I can make a little spark like you do with a fire starting stick. You know, you rub it together and rub it together until that little spark comes in and it just incites a little flame. And it's a tiny flame at first. And if you feel it, oh, for
Mm-hmm.
Pete's sake, don't give it up. You
Yep.
know, encourage it, encourage it, encourage it, because it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's something somewhere along the line that I can say or I can indicate um, to people to lose the fear, to lose the doubt, and to start living happy, to be grateful to get up in the morning and put your shoes on and get dressed for the day and just be grateful. And therein, I think, Payman, perhaps you might agree, is that gratitude is like a little fire. It's like that spark that started that fire. That gratitude will help that fire to grow and grow and grow.
Mm-hmm.
Because gratitude is love. It says, I am grateful. And if I'm grateful, I'm loving. I'm loving my new shoes. I'm loving my old shoes. I'm loving my house. I'm loving the water I drink. I'm loving the food that I eat. I'm loving the friends that I have.
Totally. No,
So
gratitude is
that's what
huge.
it's really it's a wonderful thing. And my story goes on. I think we left it where I think we left it where I was supposed to be a model, and that didn't
Mhm.
work out.
Yes.
And thanks to God, it didn't work out because I
Yes.
would have been in an awful mess.
Yes.
But you see, there again, I was only 19 years old, and I thought that was a bad thing. I thought that was a horrible thing. I was deprived of a job. It wasn't the fact that it was modeling, because honestly, I would look in the mirror and I'd say, I don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
What are these people looking at? I just
Yeah.
don't get it.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't the modeling that I was after. I didn't want to have fame. I didn't want to have recognition. I just wanted a job.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that didn't work out, I had to get a job.
Absolutely.
And I was scared stiff. I got a job at the local Chamber of Commerce. I didn't know how to operate a switchboard. I didn't know the proper etiquette to use in the business world because I had never been. So I had to learn all those things, and some of the answers that came were very harsh, and they were mean, and they were spiteful.
Yes.
So it was a very difficult climb for me, very difficult. So from there, I went to work. I think I mentioned I went to work for a very large accounting company.
Yes, I remember.
It's worldwide, or it was worldwide, and how you had to stand against the wall when the partner in charge came by, because of course, you know, and I know he was God, of course. And we were treated in such a way as to be constantly put down.
Mm-hmm.
There was one man who particularly, and I was mishired. I was told that I would only have to work for 3 to 4 people at a time at any one day. And it came out, I had to work for 7.
Wow.
And they were all very, very, very busy, and I couldn't keep up. And the woman I was taking the position from was leaving because she had a late in life pregnancy, and it required her to spend some time at home in bed. And she called me a couple of months after she left, and she said, "How is it going?" And I said, I was in tears. I said, "I can't keep up. I don't know what's wrong." And she said, "Well, honey, I didn't tell you then, but I can tell you now. They're bastards to work for."
Mm-hmm.
And I went, wow.
So did you
My
quit
God,
right after that? Did you quit right after that?
No, I didn't.
How long did you stay there?
Because I stayed there, I think it was about 8 or 9 months.
Whoa.
And how I finally got to leave was from a doctor, because I had lost so much weight. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I was nervous. My hands were shaking like a scared rabbit. And I went to the doctor, who was right down the hall. And when he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I work right down the hall from you." He said, "I thought I've seen you here before." And he said, "Well, where do you work?" And I told him, and he said, "Oh my God, woman, get the hell out of there. Those people are insane." He said, "They don't know how to treat people." And he said, "That's why there's nothing wrong with you. That's why you've lost weight. You can't eat, you can't sleep because you're so nervous." He said, "Get the hell out of there. You don't belong there." So I did. I left. And I left with their blessing, because they realized I couldn't handle the job. And so I think they were ready to fire me anyway. But I left and didn't have a job for a long time. I had to work temporary jobs, which was a blessing. At least I had something. But there I am again, out of work, you see? So there is that insecurity. How am I going to pay the rent?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Wow.
had no financial backing from home because, well, as I said, we were extremely poor. We were living on welfare.
Mm-hmm.
And welfare wasn't going to cover me anymore because I was over 18. And it was my mother's idea that I was going to stay home. I was going to go to work for the local chemical company as a secretary. I was going to give her my check, and she would dole out the money, and we were going to save up and buy a car so that we could get to places. That was her dream. And as I said back in the last podcast, that wasn't my dream. I felt like I was being strangled.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I got out of the house. But now here I am again. I'm without a job, and I don't have money. I don't know how I'm going to get money. So the worry was just tremendous. And then I moved in my first apartment. I moved in with some ladies, and that did not work out at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to leave there, and I got another apartment. And so there again, still hopping from place to place to place, which made me feel very insecure
Yes,
and
can imagine.
not knowing anything. So I got another job, but I got a job I worked for many companies in between on a temporary basis
Mm-hmm.
and through agency. And so I got a job at a private social club. Now, if anybody doesn't know what a private social club is, it's nothing nasty. It's not dirty. It means the elite of the elite where you live. So there are many private social clubs all throughout the country, maybe throughout the world for all I know.
Mm-hmm.
But the very elite of this city and of the surrounding area, people with very well-known names, company names.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these companies had offices on Fifth Avenue in New York. So they were manufacturing and all sorts of degrees of business that went on, but they were very powerful. And
Yeah.
the city was doing extremely well, but their top corporate people, the CEO, the president, and so forth, they were all members of this private social club.
Mm-hmm.
And that was run by a man who originally came from Austria.
Okay.
And his parents, he said, were in the hotel industry in Austria. And he was quite a bit older than me. He had lived through a lot of the Second World War. And he said that his parents' hotels were taken over by the Nazis.
Wow.
So they lost everything. And somewhere in there, he went to work for the OSS, which was the very beginning of the CIA.
Oh, wow.
So, excuse me, I'm going to get a drink of water.
Sure.
Very beginning of the CIA, and he was essentially a spy. And
oh, wow.
so I'm telling you that only because of the background that you need to know or understand as to what I was now working with. And I had no clue, totally clueless. And by this time, I'm 20 years old and grateful to have a job. And I was his secretary.
Okay.
And after about maybe not quite a year, I was in his office doing some filing. And he looked across his desk and he said, you know, you're really very pretty. And I love the color of your hair. And I got this sinking feeling in my stomach. And I thought, oh, I don't like this. Why don't I like this? And I said, oh, thank you. And I just was very nonchalant about it all because I really didn't care. And it was something, I'm sorry to say, but it was something I had heard probably 500 times before. And this guy telling me the same thing I had heard over and over and over and over didn't ring a bell with me. I couldn't care less. So it went on. And he was extremely adept at managing this place. The place started out, I think it was like $250,000 in debt.
Wow.
And he was hired to get them out of debt and to make all the necessary changes. And there were tremendous changes that had to be made to that building and to the membership. And he did. He pulled them out, pulled them out of the red, put them in the black, and then it just went skyward from there. And he promoted me to being the banquet manager, which meant that I took care of all the private parties, from 2 people to 400 people. And it was really quite a promotion, and one that I never felt, at first, I never felt worthy of. I was scared. I was so frightened that I was going to make a mistake, because he looked at me one day when I did make a mistake as his secretary, and he said, my dear, I hired you not to make mistakes. And somehow, it had to be God, I just popped back at him, which was not my normal behavior at all, because I wouldn't say yay, nay, or boo to a mouse. I looked at him and I said, then you should have hired God, but you didn't get him in me. I'm not perfect. You know, I said, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes and I correct them.
What did he say? What did you respond?
He just looked at me and he said, don't do it again. And I said, I may. It's not because I want to, but I'm learning. And I walked off. I didn't say anything more. So now I'm working for a man that I have no clue as to his background. I don't really know anything about him. But we moved offices, and at that time, ladies were not welcome in this club, except as a guest for dinner. It was strictly a male club. And he, I couldn't even walk in the halls during the time that luncheons were going on. And I was always gone by dinner, so that wasn't a problem. So now you have some background as to the strictness of this place. We had a wonderful chef who had been trained over in Europe, marvelous chef. And it got to the point where he couldn't really handle the volume that we were starting to pick up and pick up and pick up and grow and grow and grow. And so when I was promoted to banquet manager, that was really something that I felt was quite above me. And that's telling you more about my insecurity, about my lack of self-esteem. And I called a very dear friend whom I had just known maybe a couple of years. And I said to her, my dear, I don't think I can do this. And she said to me, with all that you have overcome up to this point, I have no doubt in my mind or in my heart that you can handle this. You can do this. I have confidence in you. That was the first person in my life, Payman, that ever said anything like that to me.
Wow.
First person. So you see, I wasn't going on a strong family background of encouragement and niceties at all. And this is the very first person to tell me I could do it. So he brought me in, and I was learning as I went. But come to find out, I had a quick mind, and I had a very good mind, only I was just beginning to discover it. And I picked up all the things that I needed to learn. As his secretary, I learned the workings of the club and the workings of a professional kitchen, which I had, of course, a lot to do with. And we hired a new chef, and he was also European trained. but he had worked at the Four Seasons in New York for a while, and he wanted out of the rat race of New York. So he came to Milwaukee, and it was a very difficult adjustment, very difficult, because chefs are not easy to work with.
Sure.
They're very volatile, and they're very demanding, and they get what they want when they want it.
Mhm.
And here I am trying to work with the members of this club. Now, the members of the club are absolute king. They're absolute king. They get whatever they want within reason. But every accommodation was made to the member. And we had, when I first started, I think it was just a few hundred members. By the time I left, we had 1,300.
Wow.
So you can see how we grew and grew very quickly. We had a brand new kitchen. We had a new parking lot, new everything. Well, then it was decided, as I had learned this, that I was also going to become the front office supervisor. And that also included the parking lot and the bartenders. So now I had 35 to 50 people who were on my so-called then staff.
Okay.
And I had to arrange schedules for them. I had to hire, I had to fire, and I had to learn all of this on my feet. And that was the only compliment that the boss ever gave me was, he said, I like how you learn quickly and you learn well. That was the only compliment in 22 years that I ever got out of the man. And I realized just about 3 or 4 months ago, you know, that man never, ever once said thank you
Wow.
to me, ever, never. So things got, they got underway quite well. We were doing just a booming business. I was a nervous wreck because of the chef. And some of the waitresses, the head waitresses, were not at all pleasant to work with and would do everything they could to undermine me. So here we go again with undermining. Here we go again with people putting demands on me that I didn't even realize they had no right to put on me. So I just thought I was there to accept. And that'll give you a nervous stomach if nothing does, you know, because you feel like a victim. And one day I was in the boss's office and he said to me, I don't know what we were discussing, something about a menu or that, and I was standing right at his shoulder. And he turned in his chair a little bit and he said, you know, I love you. And I just looked at him and I was absolutely thunderstruck. And I said, well, I don't really know what to say to that. I couldn't stand the man, Payman. I could not stand the man. To me, he was repulsive. And anything, anything other than that, I could never, ever feel for that man. But I had a job and I had to keep it. Because what else was there?
Yeah.
And so he said, if you'll let me, I will give you homes. I'll take you on trips. We'll travel the world. He said, I know a lot about the world. And he said, I'd love to show it to you. And he said, you'll never want for anything. And he said, what do you say to that? I looked at him and I said, I'm sorry, but I can't accept.
Wow.
And he just kind of gritted his jaw a little bit. And he shook his head very calmly. And he said, well, let me tell you this. Nobody tells me no.
I know a few of those people. Let me tell you that.
And he said, you can say no, but I one day will have my revenge.
Oh.
And he said, you won't know when it's coming because I'm a very patient man. I'm a very patient man. He said, don't ever forget that.
Mhm.
And you won't know when it's coming or where it's coming from, but I will have my revenge.
Wow.
Remember that. So now I have something new hanging over my head constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Then I found out that he was having me followed.
Oh,
we had a
wow.
we had a professional policeman he was a former policeman who was our security
Why would he
detective.
do that? I mean, that's crazy because a man of like that, why would he? I don't understand it. He can. What was the reasoning behind his obsession? Was it simply because you said no to him, or was it because he saw
I
something in
think
you
so.
that he didn't see in other women?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. I mean, now that I look back at it, 30 years later or 35 years later, now that I look back at it, I think that was it. It was a combination of both. And I was the first one to have the guts to say no to him.
Are you? Did you keep
And
in touch with him in some way, shape, or form?
well, I still work there.
To this day?
He was my boss. No, I worked for him for 22 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I had that over me. And now I started to get a little bit smart about things. And because
Yeah.
I have to give it credit to him, because he was showing me things that he learned in espionage
Mm.
and how he went about things. And I listened to his words. I listened to how he phrased things. I was a much better student than he ever realized.
Wow.
And so I decided at one point after a while that I really didn't want to work there anymore because the pressure was pretty intense.
Mhm.
To give you an idea, when we were at our peak, my telephone, and I only had one phone, my telephone was picked up by me either to answer a call or to place the call for my business anywhere from 70 to 100 times a day.
Wow.
That was pressure. I had the girls at the front office who were answering phones. They were complaining because I got so many calls. They couldn't keep up with taking all the messages. They couldn't get their other work done.
Wow.
Now that's busy.
Sure.
And I'm doing this all still under the iron hand of a chef and waitresses who absolutely despise me. Only the Lord knows why, but they did. And I had to work with maitre d's, many of whom were totally unprofessional and not worth their pay. And so of course I had to make up for it. So it was a very high pressure job, and I can tell you many times, and then having to put up with and I say put up with, many of the members themselves, because I worked directly with them or their assistants back in the office.
Mm-hmm.
But everything in that place ran like a Swiss watch.
Wow.
If I told the chef that these people wanted dinner at 7 p.m., dinner was ready at 7 p.m. to the
Wow.
dot.
Mm-hmm.
There was no give and take. There was no supplication to the member and the timing and that. And I would say to people, now, are you sure you want dinner at 7 o'clock, or if it was lunch, whatever the time?
Mm-hmm.
Because the chef is very, very prompt. And so whatever I tell him, that's exactly what he'll do. And he doesn't flex once you're here. You're dealing with some very expensive food and wine.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to know that there is a precision here that I have to obey.
Sure.
And because the food was absolutely unparalleled, it was fantastic.
What kind of what kind of food were they making? Was it the restaurant? Was it
Well, we had, as I said, we had the chef. It was all French cuisine,
oh, I see. Okay. So
French service, French.
so the man that made you this offer, was that the chef or was that the owner?
No, that was the manager. The manager.
Oh, the manager, not even the owner. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
he ran the whole place.
Okay. Wow.
He ran the whole place.
You know if the guy still is around or is gone?
Well, hopefully he's dead.
Well,
But
yeah.
he should be by now. I mean, he would be old enough. He would certainly be well into his 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the thing that that was the situation that I lived in. I had no back. He would back me, and I knew exactly what he wanted, when he wanted it, how he wanted it, and how it was going to go. And my self-esteem rose only because I realized that I knew what he wanted before he knew what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And it was done before he knew it needed to be done, so that everything came out in this perfect picture. I took care of everything, minute details. There was a lamp that had a little tear in the shade. It had to be replaced, Or I would work with a decorator. I would work with the florist, because we had our own florist. And I took care of all the fine details. So we had people coming into this place from all over the world, which was a marvelous experience, a tremendous growth experience. And to give you a background, and of course we have to realize this is, 35 and 40 years ago. But just to redo the decorating, that means the drapery and the table linen for one large, sort of large room was $250,000.
Wow.
So back then that was big money. Now it would probably be close to $1 million. So we had everything. We had the finest china. We had great china and silver. As a matter of fact, when I first came there, the china was designed to match the design in the carpeting. So we had Irish linen tablecloths, which we eventually got rid of because it was just too expensive. So everybody who was anybody belonged there, and I met many, many, many famous people. So it was really quite an education. And then the pressure just became too much. And he began the boss to go on vacations, which was fine. Well, at first it was only 2 weeks, and that lasted for several years. And then it became 3 weeks. Well, then I was kind of left holding the bag for everything if it didn't turn out. The chef had the back of the house, but I had the entire front of the house. And so that was a lot of responsibility, and I never got paid more for doing it when he was gone. I never even got a thank you. And some days I worked 6.5 days a week. Sometimes I worked 8 hours a day minimum, but usually 10. And, the hours, the time, I remember telling a Secret Service agent one day, because we were having a dignitary in, and I said, I was so tired when I got home last night. I didn't even realize how I got home. I just all of a sudden found myself in my house wondering how I got there. And he said, I understand that. I get that. So I decided I was going to try to leave. And I didn't say anything to the boss. I didn't say anything to anybody. Realizing that he was having me followed, I couldn't say anything to anybody.
Wow. So how did you find out? How soon did you find out that you were being followed? Or did someone tell you, or how did you find out?
I found out because somebody called me at home and I had a private unlisted number,
Oh, okay.
you see? And all of a sudden, 1 and 1 made 2, plus 1 is 3, plus and plus and plus. And then you finally began to realize this man is having me followed.
So when
And then he would make...
when that person called you at your home, did they say anything that made you suspect, hey, where that person got my phone number from, or anything like that?
Well, I did. I asked that. I said, how did you get my phone number? And he said, well, I have connections. I have connections. That's all he would tell me. And then one day I walked outside of my small apartment building and I saw one of the people that worked security for us. Only he didn't want me to see him. And he quick backed up and tried to make himself, invisible. But it was too late. I already saw him.
Mm-hmm.
That and the phone call and some other things, just little things, just kept adding up and adding up. And then when I wanted to go on vacation, the boss said, I want the telephone number of where you are.
Huh.
And I looked at him and I said, why? And he said, well, don't forget, you have an important role here. If anything goes wrong, you may have to come back.
Yeah, sure.
And I thought, yeah, right. I deserve this vacation. I only got 2 weeks vacation.
Indeed.
Whereas other companies were giving their people growth potential, so their vacation time went up. Not mine, not ever.
Wow.
And couldn't even get a raise out of the old boy.
So
and
why did you stay with that job if you were doing a fantastic job?
Yeah, I tried quitting. I'm not quitting, but I tried applying at other places. And all of a sudden, after about the 4th or 5th time of not getting a job for which I was very qualified, and somebody made the comment to me, you'll never get a job because you were at the university club.
Wow.
And I went, what is going on? And then somebody not connected with any of this said, well, sure, that would kind of make sense. And I said, well, how does that make sense? I'm totally in the dark here. Well, why would any company which has a membership in that club, why would any company hire away the star of the show? Because it would look bad for them, perhaps, with the management of your place.
Oh, wow.
And maybe that would make trouble for them. And then if it made trouble for them, it might make trouble with their contacts, with their business associates who were also members or people whom they were trying to impress. So they're not going to risk anything by hiring you. And I went, oh my God, I never thought of that. It never occurred to me.
Wow.
So by that time, things were getting very difficult with the staff. He hired several women to be secretary. None of them really lasted very long because it was a very, very, very demanding place. And when I was gone, that woman would have to take my place as banquet manager. And they didn't get paid extra for it either. So with the responsibility that I had, the pressure that I had trying to find somebody to replace me was very difficult, but they didn't have a choice. If they wanted a job, they had to sit in my chair. So I had to constantly train people to do what I do, which is very, very detailed, very detailed. And that's what made me a success, was the tremendous detail.
Yeah.
They say that success is in the details.
Yeah, the devil's in
And
the
they would
details.
look at me.
Absolutely.
yeah, they would look at me when I was trying to train them and they'd say, "Are you kidding me? Oh my God, I have to do that too?" And I'd say, "Yes, ma'am. That's all part of the job." And so they would just leave. And then he hired someone that I couldn't understand why he hired her, because she had absolutely zero personality. She didn't want to be talked to. When I would come in the morning, I'd say, "Hi, good morning," because we shared an office,
Sure.
which was right next door to the boss. And I'd say, "Hi, how are you doing today?" And I'd put my purse down and start my work. And finally, she said to me one day, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" And I said, "Sure, what's up?" And she said, "When you come in the morning, it really disturbs me when you say good morning."
Wow.
What? And I say, "Why would that disturb you?" Well, that's the civil thing to do when you're working in such close proximity. When you see people first thing in the morning, you say hello or good morning. Well, I don't like it. It makes me nervous. So from that point, his secretary, the level there went down. And then he began to take longer vacations. And I began to get very exhausted thinking, you've really got a lot of nerve when you don't even come back and say, "Thanks for taking over," or "I appreciate the help," or particular parties would go extremely well and the members would be very, very happy. And they would send me a note of thanks, or they would send me a bouquet of flowers once in a blue moon. And, but that was the only thanks I ever got. And yet I'm doing all of this without him there.
Wow.
And I thought, you know what, I'm fed up with this. And I think that was at about 18, 19 years. And as I said, I was trying to get out of there and nobody would hire me. And then that thing that let me know that he was paying very close attention was that I applied for a job in Arizona. And his own way, he said, the place in Arizona doesn't quite match ours. Doesn't quite measure up. And I thought, got me followed. So it was a very, very terrifying thing because there's always this threat hanging over you about how is this man going to hurt me? What is he going to do to hurt me? And so when I told this to an osteopathic physician I had at the time, she said to me, "I want you to write me a detailed explanation of how he approached you when he said he loved you." And she said, "I want you to write it all down. I want you to make at least 3 copies and give me 2 of them." And I said, "What are you going to do with them?" She said, "I'm going to keep one and I'm giving one to my attorney. And my attorney's instructions are going to be to turn it over to the police should anything happen to you."
Wow.
And so I'm living with that threat constantly there, constantly there. Your life is in danger, but you don't know, as he said, when it's going to strike and how is it going to strike. And so there's that pressure. And working with some of these members was very difficult. Some of them were extremely demanding. And when the Secret Service would be there, I would have to take care of all of that detail for the security of whomever we were having in as a guest. And while that was very interesting, it was very time consuming, and it just put more pressure on me because those phone calls were still coming in, and I would pick up that phone still 60, 70, 80 times a day.
Sure.
So the pressure was there, and I was learning more about myself, and I was getting older, so I was becoming a little more confident. And I decided I was going to start to do less because I wasn't getting paid anymore. And I know one day when I said to him, he was complaining about some of the staff, not the people in charge. but he was complaining about staff. And it just made me so angry because I couldn't get people. It was very difficult for me to hire people at the wage that we were offering. And I said to him, you pay a monkey's wage, you're going to get a monkey. I thought he was going to explode. I thought he would just absolutely explode. How dare you say that?
Wow.
And I walked out thinking, I dare say that because here's a man who says that there isn't anything in any store in Milwaukee that would be suitable to buy anything for his family as a gift. So he had to go to Chicago.
Wow.
And when he came back from one of his famous shopping trips, because every year he took a shopping trip before Christmas to buy gifts. And he stopped at my desk and he just kind of laughed a little bit and he turned around and he put his hand under his tie and he said, Hermes, I paid $90 for this tie.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that ridiculous? And I thought, you have got a lot of arrogance and audacity to talk to somebody that I can't even get a raise out of you. And you have the gall to stand there and tell me about your $90 Hermes tie.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have to wrap your Christmas presents yet. So I wasn't good at wrapping presents. I hate wrapping presents to this day. If you get a gift from me, it's going to be in a gift bag and that's it. If you don't like gift bags, then you don't get a gift. And he didn't like the way I wrapped them, I'm sure. And I only did it like maybe 4 years in a row. And I thought, I've got to take time away from my desk, my duties, so I can work even harder to keep up to the pace that you've set. And now you've got me wrapping your stupid damn present.
Wow.
It was just unbelievable, the arrogance there.
Sure.
So when he found that I started doing a little less, it didn't take him long to figure it out, being a spy that he was. Didn't take him long. And the little things that I used to do around there just weren't done anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then things got bad. Things got really bad. The pressure really got on. And how he eventually got rid of me to fire me was to he put people in the position of coming in and making unreasonable demands for having a party.
Like what kind of
And-
unreasonable demands?
It was things that the club just simply was not established to do. We didn't have the equipment or we didn't have the facility. And they would make very caustic comments because they were going to be important. And I'd say, well, I certainly have you talk to the manager about that, but as far as I know, I'm not able to say yes to that. And it was so impossible that right there on the spot, I realized that this was a setup. It was set up to make me look bad so he could fire me.
Wow.
And then he called down from his room because he had a suite. We had a very limited amount of sleeping rooms or suites. And he had one, and he called down and he said, that girl that you hired as a bell person. I said, yes. He said, get rid of her.
Wow.
And I said, why? And I'm sorry to say this, but it's the absolute truth. And that's what I'm dealing with, you, Payman, and our listeners, is I'm telling absolute truth. He said, because she's Black and the board of directors don't want Black to work on our staff. And I thought, whoa, there's something terribly wrong here. And I said, I realized immediately, again, this was a setup. And I said to him, on what grounds would you have me fire her?
Mm-hmm.
He said, she's your part of your staff. You figure it out. And I immediately thought on my feet, thank God. But by this time, I was already starting to become overwhelmed, exhausted to the point of hardly even knowing my name. But somehow God came through and said, I can do that. However, do you realize that that would be a lawsuit against the club because of discrimination? And we can't do that. I would hate to, but I would hate to obligate the club to a lawsuit. And it came out that I had to let her go anyway, but on my terms, on my grounds, not because he said I had to. So she was gone anyway. So he lost that battle. And then the woman upstairs in bookkeeping would call down and say, at the front desk, we sold some very lovely cigars. And she said, 20 of them are not accounted for. So it's somebody on your staff that's stealing. And I said, no way anybody on my staff is stealing. Well, they're gone. And I said, then you better count again. So it was things like that. Things were missing. Figures didn't add up, so it was my fault. And I realized that this was all part and parcel of trying to get rid of me, because the other woman that he hired to be his secretary was extremely, extremely a nasty, very difficult person. And she was just always complaining about me. And so he called me in one day and he said, I don't know what's going on between you two women, but he said, you better figure it out. And I said, me? Yes, you. You call her, you get her together. You have a meeting, take a room and have a meeting and find out what this is all about. And I said, I have no idea what this is about. He said, I didn't ask for your opinion. I asked you, and I'm telling you, have a meeting with her right now. So I found a little room where we could go, and I said to her, I guess the boss wants us to have a meeting, let's go. Oh, well, it isn't convenient. And I said, I really don't care. The boss said, have a meeting, we're having a meeting, let's go. So I went down, and I sat down, and I said to her, so exactly what's the problem? You're complaining, not to me, but to him. So what's the problem? Well, I don't like the fact that I have to take over for you because your job is too demanding and it's too complicated, and I don't get paid for anything extra when I'm taking over for you. And so you have to correct that. And I said, not me, not my job. And I said, if you want a raise and you feel that you're due more, and I agree, you deserve a, recompense for filling in for me. But that's between you and him, not between you, him, and me, because I have nothing to say about it. And that was all that she could complain about. So that setup didn't work either. So it was just time after time after time, Payman, that this went on. And finally, we were putting in the very first restaurant computer system, and it was a disaster. If you've never had to be in a place to set up a brand new computer system with people who don't know A to Z about anything on computers because they're brand new, that's what it was. It was just hell on earth. So that was giving me migraines. I was starting to lose weight. And I didn't want to quit. So because I wanted unemployment, and I couldn't get unemployment if I quit. So the man that worked in the Comptroller's office, he was the head of the Comptroller's office, he and I got along very well. We used to eat lunch together every day, not because we were such great friends, but because that was the edict. You and you are heads of that you have to eat at the same time to that. So he didn't like the boss either. Nobody liked the boss, but he called me one day. He said, can you meet me in the back hall? And I said, sure, what's the matter? I said, I'll tell you. So I met him in the back hall. I said, what's up? And his his face was just white. And he said, I knew that the boss hated me.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. The boss would pick on him and about his cheap clothing and how he always looked tacky.
Mm-hmm.
And very, very nice man, a very accommodating man. And but the boss didn't like him. And he said to me, I came down the back stairs after lunch, and I got down to the first floor. And he said the boss was standing in the hallway in the back there. And he said, the most god-awful thing I've ever seen in my life. He said, I've never seen anything like it before, and I hope I never do again. I said, well, what was it? I can't imagine. He said, Catherine, over this man was this black shadow, and it kept changing form. And then it would turn, and this big tongue would come out, and it would be dripping spit, and it would be just glowing, and these eyes were just fierce, he said, and that was all over him. He said, it so shocked me that I backed up from where I came, and I quickly closed the door, and he said, and I ran upstairs as fast as I could. And I said, well, that's all the evil in that man. And then I told him the story of a psychic that I had seen many years prior to that. I think I was like 22 years old. And I said, I had asked that psychic about this boss, and I said, I don't like him. What can I do to get out of there? And the psychic said, you're going to be there for quite a while. And I looked at him, I was almost in tears. And he said, the man is carrying a monkey on his back. And I said, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, he's something very, very terrible. And he's running away, he's hiding, because he doesn't think that if he mixes himself into the society here in your city, the people that are looking for him won't find him.
Mm-hmm.
And that was way back then. So that's why I was able to tell this comptroller, that's the evil in him. And I told him the story, and he said, well, I'm going to hand in my notice of resignation. And he said, if you like, I'll write you a letter of recommendation, because he said, you're never going to get one out of him. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm making him fire me because I have to have unemployment. So we wrote each other a letter of recommendation because we weren't going to get anything from the boss. And he called me in one day. The boss called me in one day, and he said, you've been here a long time. And he said, I don't like your attitude. The staff doesn't like you, which payment was absolutely not true.
Wow.
He said, you're arrogant and you're rude. And he said, as of today, you're no longer working here.
Wow. What a story.
And
What
I
a
said,
story.
well,
Thank you for sharing it. Thank you for sharing it. And
so that's how it ended.
yeah, wow. Is there any parting tips you want to share? Because we can keep going on for hours and hours, but let's start wrapping things up here. So do you have any parting tips or any parting lesson that all of this taught you that you would like to share with the listeners?
Well, I do. I want to encourage people to not work at something that they really don't like. They really hate it. Don't just do it for the income, but go into yourself. Now you've got a job, go into yourself, meditate, and find out from your higher presence what it wants you to do, because whatever it wants you to do, you will love to do. So follow your heart, because that's where the presence lives. And don't do what I did. Stay because you couldn't find another job. Because even if you're hungry, you'll be happier than you are working for somebody that you really can't tolerate, or a job that you can't tolerate.
Yeah. Okay, great insight. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and all that. Your amazing story. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I salute you. You truly do with a heart. And until next time, my friend, have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye bye.
You as well, Payman. Thank you. Bye bye.
You're welcome. Bye bye.